Hi, it's David with Oklahoma Ham Radio, the YouTube channel, and oklahomahamradio.com. We're on step 6, or group 6 assembly, which is the transmitter strip. This portion of the build, there's a couple things you need to watch out for, and nothing too serious, but other than the very last step. So stick around, check it out. I'll be back at the end of the video to show that last step and why it's so important. Hey, if you would, please like, subscribe, share with friends, family, loved ones, all that good stuff. I would appreciate it. Really like this video. If you're not subscribed, you find this helpful, please subscribe. I would appreciate it. Thanks. So we're on to the last part of the build, which is the Group 6 assembly. You start off with a toroid that you wrap 15 turns around that toroid. Again, the very last page shows, of the instruction manual, shows how to wrap toroids, but every time through the middle counts as one. So the first pass where you go from outside the toroid in counts as one, even though you haven't wrapped it around the outside of that toroid yet. Wrap the magnetic wire around. So also when you pull it through, just pull it snug and try to, I find it easiest anyway, to try to align that wire correctly as I pull it through, because once you pull it snug, it's kind of there. Hopefully it doesn't move around a lot. So anyway, here I wrap that toroid. I've shown this a couple other times, but this is for the L3 position on the board. Yeah, so I'll let this portion of it play out. By the way, if you hear something in the background, I apologize. Someone asked me to print some of my antenna parts for them, and I agreed to do that. So that's going in the background right now. I hopefully have enough rejection off of this mic that you're not picking up too much of that. But again, 15 turns. It's that number 26 red magnet wire around the T37-6 yellow toroid. And here I'm just trying to get that spacing right on those wraps. This one I had a little more trouble with than the others for some reason. There's nothing special about this toroid, and I've used this magnet wire before, but I just had a bit more difficulty getting those wraps aligned just right on this toroid. It happens sometimes, and hopefully, I don't get a call from Smokin' Ape, who's doing a video this evening on toroids. So now that I've got that toroid wrapped, I take that razor blade, scrape off the enamel on the outside of that wire so that, solder has something to adhere to. We've spoken about that before, so it's same process, just another toroid. Just make sure you don't go through so much that you damage that wire. So clip off the ends and solder it onto the board. The rest of the parts of this build go quicker after you've got that toroid done and in place. I look for all three for quite a while and finally go to, again, that map and find it, slide it into the board, bend over the ends. It's, I guess I wasn't happy with the wraps still, so throw it on the floor real quick. It is important to get these, lined up. You don't want those wraps to be on top of each other or anything crazy like that. But all right, slide it into the board, bend those legs over, hit it with some solder. And I had some problems finding the end of my solder here. But anyway, it happens. So. There, I'm just bending that wire back up that I bent down so I can solder it real well. Take the voltmeter, check to make sure that, I am getting what I anticipate out of that toroid, and that everything looks like it's, right. So that was step 1 of group 6. The rest of it goes much faster, I can assure you. What I'm doing here actually is that enamel that's on the wire. I don't think I got it trimmed back quite far enough. So I'm testing over and over and over again, trying to make sure that I do get, have conductivity. Finally, I go to the other side of the board, and sure enough, I do have a good connection. So now on to step 2. Step 2 is just a capacitor. It's pretty easy to get in there and get soldered. By the time you get to this point, you have soldered quite a few capacitors on the board. So it's no big deal other than the fact that things are starting to get congested on the board. Right, step 3 is a resistor. It's a 10K resistor. I think if I remember right, there are 22 10K resistors in this project. This goes in R23. The next batch to install is R24, 25, 28, and 45. These are 1K resistors. This first one does bend over. it doesn't lay flat on the board. It's that whole bend over thing that they got going on a lot on this board. It's not uncommon, but it's something I had forgotten about with through hole design versus surface mount. You don't see that obviously in surface mount components. Here I'm just going through and cleaning up a couple of little spots that I saw and inspecting it, making sure that everything's fine before going on to the next resistor, probably R25. This whole section, this Group 6 assembly, took me just under an hour to complete. This is probably R28, probably. I can't tell with what I'm looking at directly. Then R45. I do bust out another resistor out of another pack. I guess I've misplaced one during the build process, so I will be buying some more parts and pieces from DigiKey to finish out the 40 meter phaser that I bought. I used some parts on the 17 meter that were missing, and then the some pieces I used on this 20 meter because I just couldn't find them. So next is R27. R27 is a 100 ohm resistor. And the next one's R26. It's a 10 ohm resistor. You can see that even though it does get crowded on the board, it's not too bad. I think the board's laid out pretty well. Okay, the next couple, let's see, are a couple of diodes, D4 and D5. They are different values. Um, D4 is a IN4148 diode. D5 is, I'm sorry, I said IN. It's 1N4148. D5 is a 1N4756. Make sure that you get them in the proper orientation with what the board says. It is screen printed correctly with the direction that the black line should go, identified on both of these. If you ever have any question, look at the pictures that are provided, and it will show you which direction these need to be mounted in. I saw just a little bit of what could have been a bridge there. It was close enough that I did not like it, so I spent some time trying to clean that up. This is D5. Here I'm just trying to get it down on the board real snug. Get those legs pushed through there just right. There's a reason for that. Next component is two resistors, R29A and R29B. They're both 1 ohm resistors. They go on that, well, they go back there pretty close to the, well, they're really the left-hand side of the board, but they go, right in the middle of the left-hand side. So if you can't, if you're holding it with a device like this to work on the board, then you kind of got a problem, because that's right where that side claw or side clamp grabs. Here I had actually gone and gotten some dinner real quick and came back. So there's only 3 more components to install. Q3 is a little transistor. It does have a heatsink on it, but it's not the one with the large heatsink. Q3 is pretty much the bottom left-hand side of the board. I look around for it for a little bit before I finally find it here. So I find the transistor, cut it out of the little tape that they have holding it in place. That black on that card is styrofoam, and the pins are protected by that styrofoam, but you do want to make sure that you get all the tape off of the case of that, of any of the transistors. They get hot, so that tape being on there is probably not a really good thing. So just give it a little bit of room, hit it, try not to get too hot, be quick with your solder. There, I'm feeling it to make sure it doesn't get too hot again, just like the other transistors that we've discussed. And clip them on all off. Clip off the legs. So there's two pieces left. We're really close to the end of the build. So the two pieces, one is a toroid. It only takes 5 turns. It is a large toroid compared to the others, which is this one. Now, large being relatively speaking. But anyway, the wire that you use is the thick wire. Let's see, that wire is not identified on the instruction sheet other than heavier gauge magnet wire. It is much more firm of all the wire. So 5 wraps. This one you wrap technically the same way as the others, but give yourself room between wraps. You're only going to have 4 loops on the toroid, so space it out when you do it, when you wrap it. Also, that thicker gauge wire is not going to, hug the sides of that toroid quite as tightly as that thinner gauge wire. Again, space out your wires. I went ahead and just clipped that off. I knew, with 5 wraps, it's pretty obvious that you've got enough wire there. It's easy to count 5 wraps also. So, and you can be a little more rigorous with the scraping of the enamel off of the toroid, because that wire isn't going to cut easily compared to the other. So like with all the other toroids, I make sure I got a clean solder point on that wire. Insert it into the board. I use my thumbnail, by the way, again to kind of scrape that enamel off after it's been scored like crazy from the razor. So insert it in there. Bend it over, Here I went ahead and bent both of them down. Usually I bend one leg down instead of 2. But what I wanted to do is get that solder on that wire very good. That way, just in case I didn't get enough of that enamel off of the top, I can, use solder to fill in where that wire is in order to make a good connection. And I coated it fairly well with solder. Do some tests, make sure that enamel, getting good readings. That enamel coating is not blocking that solder. The last part of the build, I have the board right here, and I want to try to get it close enough to the camera here to discuss that last part. I don't have anything to point with here, so we'll point with the finger. See if we can get this in focus. So this piece is the last part, okay? It is actually a component, a component right here. This is a heatsink. The heatsink is conductive. Underneath this, that's a good picture. you can see that if you push this down too far, you will hit that the lead right there, right by this. Let me see if I can find it. Right in here, you'll hit that. That's a resistor, but where it hits it is actually right on that lead. What happens is that causes current to go through the heatsink, and it will fry the board. So when you mount that piece, give room. So see how right here, boy, over here, if you look, see if I can get that to show. Maybe you can see it there, but it is standing up quite a bit. Don't drop that component all the way on the board. Give yourself some room so that you're not touching any of those other components. So I hope that shows you a gotcha that will, you've put it all together, all your tests have worked great, gotcha right at the end. That you might get in a rush to finish building this and get it on the air, test it out, and next thing you know, you see smoke coming out of it because of a silly mistake. So pay attention to that. Let's see, the only gotchas that I really saw, well, I see that I do not have C40 installed here. So I need to see what that is, see where I missed C40. It's actually labeled as C46 on the manual. So I gotta go get that installed. I may have left that out intentionally to show it, but I don't remember doing that. Let's see. These guys, these filters, make sure to give a nice bend on the top of them. Don't make it a real sharp bend. You will damage them. Another gotcha is just the toroids, which they're not that big of a deal. On this toroid, I'm going to say it like a toroid. It's got two wires. Make sure that you get the reds one direction and the greens another direction. It's silk screened. On the silk screen, you can see two squares, and it tells you which ones need to be connected. Red, red, green to green. All of these ICs all point that way. So number one pin is going that way on all of them, or this way on these up here. That way. So that's good to know. Don't heat up your transistors very much. That's these guys right here. Don't heat those up too much. Same with, these. Don't solder on those pins after you get these ICs in. Make sure that they're all soldered in place for a wall first. This red LED, if you're going to use the case, you don't want to have that installed. I'll take it back off before I use my case. It's no big deal. Here's a jumper that's used only if you use the case. Make sure to strip the toroid wires cleanly enough to get solder on them. Really good. Use these 2 points. Go ahead and solder them. They don't serve any purpose other than to hold this BNC in place, but throw solder on those also to help hold it in place. Yeah, that's about it. That I hope. Oh, and most importantly, make sure that you give this guy room. Don't put him right down on the board. If anything, make him too high, not too low. And that's really about it for that. I'll show you the back with all my solder points just so you can laugh, make fun of, tell me I did something wrong, my soldering looks horrible, whatever. One thing I would do is take acetone and clean the back of this now to get all of that flux that's in your solder. If you used flux solder, get all that off of there. So here it is. I need to go put on C40, and the next video will be to see if I can get on the air in it with FT8, see if the antenna works. See, yeah, I couldn't even tell you if my antenna works. I know that it has low SWR on certain bands. I know where it should work, but I can't tell you what my noise floor is going to be. I don't have another radio other than this right now. I will have some more videos out when I do get my other radio. It's a Flex 6400. I'm really looking forward to that. But please like, subscribe. Thanks for watching this series. Hopefully I helped somebody out. Hopefully this radio works. We'll find out in the next video. 73, guys. Thanks.